Hello. So I wanted to give a basic rundown of the zodiac wheel for like the absolute astrology beginner. Um, I'll just jump right in. So the first sign of the zodiac wheel is Aries, and Aries is a cardinal fire sign. So as such, Aries tend to be the go-getters. They're like the big bang, They're the fire that got it, all that shit started. Anytime you see a fire sign or fire anywhere, fires work fast. They're quick. They move. That's what Aries is all about. So they get all that shit started. And a cardinal sign, when you think of a cardinal quality, they tend to be the leaders. So the Aries is the leader of the zodiac wheel. And then after you have all that craziness of Aries and getting everything started, you move into Taurus. And Taurus is the fixed earth sign. And so with Taurus, because they're fixed, that's why they say they're stubborn. That's why their animal is the bull. So they do tend to dig their heels in the ground a little bit, but where Aries has started all of this shit, Taurus is there to ground them and to say, okay, but like this has to get finished. Like great ideas, dude, but like we're going to have to finish this somehow. And so your fixed signs are always going to be the ones who tend to get things done. They tend to have a certain way that they like things done. And so that's where Taurus comes in. You get to the third sign of the zodiac wheel, and that is Gemini. That's me. You're talking about the sun sign. That's me. Geminis are a mutable air sign. So you can see there's a flow to the wheel. So with Gemini, after all the craziness of Aries and getting everything started, the fast-moving fire, and then Taurus coming in and saying, okay, but work, we have to get this done. And Taurus is also about like your material possessions. Like anything with Earth is going to deal with like the tangible, what you can actually see, hold, touch, grab, that type of stuff. So you get to Gemini, and Gemini's like, what do you mean? They're a mutable air sign. They're just out there in the ether. They're ruled by Mercury, and so they tend to be kind of up in their minds a lot. They can talk a really good game. Usually they're very good at communicating because, again, ruled by Mercury. Whereas Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Venus tends to be more feminine. Gemini is a masculine sign. So sometimes they might act like they can do a lot of shit, and then you find out, oh, they really can't. And that's Gemini, and their interests are varied and wide, and they go really far, and so they tend to like dip lightly into everything, but not like deeply into one thing. And so then after we have all of that, we get into the summer solstice, right, where Aries starts us out with the springtime. So you think of Aries as starting things. Spring is when everything starts blooming, everything opens up, the sun comes out more. And then you get into the summer solstice, and that's right when the days are much longer than the nights. And that's where we get into Cancer. And Cancer, we go back to a cardinal sign, right? We always go cardinal, fixed, air. Now we're back in Cancer. So we're in another cardinal sign, but now it's water because there's 4 elements. And the zodiac wheel runs just like that. Fire, earth, air, water. So we're back into water. And so Cancer is ruled by the moon. And so Cancer is that really feminine, flowing, emotional energy. They're cardinal signs. So Cancers tend to make really good empathic leaders. Think of like the mother. So the Cancer types can usually be very motherly, very sensitive. And that's why they're crabby, they might be moody. I'm a Gemini. I think I'm moodier than a Cancer. So that's really Cancer's purpose, right? They tend to be motherly. They tend to empathically lead versus just lead out of control. And then after we get out of Cancer season, we start coming into Leo season. And so Leo, we're back to fire, and we are in a fixed sign. So Leo's the lion. They're the heart of gold, but they're also like the actor on the stage. Like they love being seen. Think of Madonna. She's a Leo through and through. And so in Leo season, right, them being fixed, they tend to be like kind of earth grounded a little bit more stubborn. They really like things a certain way. They want to act their life a certain way. They tend to be more charismatic. Everything's really fun, right? Think July through August. It's hot. It's young. That is Leo season. But they're the lion. They're the heart of gold. So oftentimes there's a deep, deep heart in there that might be hard to see through like that, all the fun acting that Leo does. We come out of Leo, right, and all that fun, and we get into Virgo. And that's my ascendant sign. And you pay attention, your three planets your three things to pay attention to are sun, ascendant, and moon. So Virgo is the Virgin. They deal with purification. Virgos tend to really like routine and order. They're all about healing. So we're going through this zodiac wheel, and now Virgo is like, hey man, how do we heal this shit that comes up, right? And so Virgos like purification. They want the path to be perfect. They tend to go towards perfectionism, and they want it perfectly paved before they make the decision to move. And so for me, having my ascendant Virgo, I've always had to look before I leap, and then sometimes I don't leap, so I come back because I'm scared. And that's a total Virgo quality. It's like, oh God, if it's not perfect, if I can't make it perfect, it's not going to work. And I think I already said that they are a mutable earth sign. So they can be adaptable, but they're earth, so they're very grounded. And they're also ruled by Mercury. I forgot to mention Leo's ruled by the sun. That's why it's very young. It's summer. Virgo's ruled by Mercury. So they're said to be really good communicators. And so having Gemini and Mercury, they're supposed to be like the big Gemini and Virgo are said to be the communicators of the zodiac wheel. After Virgo, we get into my favorite time of year, the autumn equinox. And it's called an equinox. So autumn and spring are equinoxes. It's because on that day and night are the exact same time. When we get into the autumn equinox, that's when we start moving towards shorter days and longer nights. And so coming into this autumn equinox, we're getting into a more yin, right? Summer was super young. The days are long. The sun is out. Everybody's out except me because I hate the summer. And so we get into the fall equinox. And in the fall equinox, this is when we start getting into Libra season, and Libra's all about balance. And I totally forget, I think Venus rules Libra as well as Taurus. And so Libra is all about balance, right? We think of the scales, and Libra is gosh, I should know this off the top of my head. This is embarrassing. Good Lord. It's, I believe it's cardinal. It's a cardinal air sign. I didn't find that on here, but it's a cardinal air sign. So they're the seekers of harmony and beauty. Because I am pretty sure they're ruled by Venus. I'm not seeing it on my cool little app. So yeah, Libra. And that's kind of what we're getting into with the fall equinox, right? Like we get into this equilibrium. And it's also the time of like storing things, right? For the winter, for like the deathening season. I personally consider summer to be more of a death season. Like I hate the heat. I spend my time inside. Summer is not my bag. Like I need to go somewhere cold for the summer. So yes, Libra is air. They're masculine. And they're cardinal. So they're outgoing, creative, ruled by Venus, the planet of love and relationships. So always think about like harmony in relationships when you think about a Libra. There's of course dark side aspects to this, which I may get into at another time, but right now I'm not focusing on too many dark aspects. Then after Libra, we get into Scorpio. And Scorpio to me is kind of a doozy, not a bad one, but Scorpio is a fixed water sign. And so I know a lot of Scorpios in my life. My mother's a Scorpio, my aunt's a Scorpio, my niece is a Scorpio, I've dated Scorpios. I know a lot about Scorpios. Scorpios being fixed water, they're highly emotional. And because I believe Pluto rules Scorpio, Mars used to rule Scorpio. Mars is like that fiery masculine planet, right? Like, ooh, right in your face, and all that sexual energy, and that's Scorpio. Scorpio rules the genitals. Makes perfect sense because Scorpio is all about death and rebirth. So when we get into Scorpio season, right, we start getting into Thanksgiving, Christmas. We kind of lead up to that point. So Scorpio is all about death and resurrection. And it's not a bad thing. We in the West look at death as like this horrible, scary thing. Even I work on that a lot, thinking about death. Wow, I'm really pissed off at this person, but like, what if they died? We don't like thinking about death. Scorpio forces us to think about death. Right when we get into Scorpio season, astrologically, we see plants dying, everything kind of going into like this hibernation mode. And so with Scorpios, they tend to be, well, they tend to be magnetic, persuasive, right? They're very intense. To me, they seem to be a very intense sign every time I've met one. They tend to deal a lot with how can I benefit from relationships. So that stuff comes up. Being a feminine water signs are always going to be more emotional. And because Scorpio is fixed, they're going to be stubbornly emotional. And so that's why I think oftentimes, at least when I think of Scorpio, I think of manipulative, because they can be. And it makes sense. They're working with ways to manipulate. Water is very manipulative. And oftentimes, I have a good friend who's a Scorpio too, who does not seem at all like a Scorpio, except that she is good at managing things. And I have seen that with Scorpios. They can be very good at managing things. I think it's the fixed quality. I've also seen the dark side of Scorpio a lot. So anyway, I think that's all I wanted to talk about. So when we come, the ruling planet is Mars or Pluto. So Mars is outward activity, but now I think they say Pluto rules it. So Pluto, it's related to will and intense passion and has a reputation for ruthlessness. That is the word I was looking for. Again, not a bad thing. It's just different. Then we get into, after Scorpio, we get into the sign of Sagittarius. Oh, I should mention that Scorpio is also the scorpion. All of these symbols with astrology show a lot about the sign, the scorpion. What does a scorpion do, right? Think of it stinging. I think I've said a lot about Scorpio. Then we get into Sagittarius. And Sagittarians, to me, have always been like really good at being able to talk. Sagittarians are very adventurous. So Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign. So mutable signs, right, that's going to be Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and then Pisces. And we'll get to Pisces later. So it's a mutable fire. Fuck, I said fire. Fire sign. And so they tend to be all about, they too also have like fast change, fast moving, where we had Scorpio kind of like death and resurrection. You can think of it as like a death of like old ways of being, death of ideas that weren't working, whatever. And then that's great because you get into Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is the truth seeker. They are adventurous. So we had the death and the resurrection, and Sagittarius is like, cool, I'm going to figure out the truth with this shit. And I'm going to have a little adventure and self-discovery. And so Sagittarians, if you think of the sign of Sagittarius, they're big on like philosophy, the occult, other ways of thinking. My moon is actually in Sagittarius. And I am big on philosophy, ideas, which is also a Gemini thing. And other like spirituality, and that's a lot of what Sagittarians are. They're very good-natured. They have an affirmative outlook, and because they're truth seekers, they tend to like deal with honesty and moral. But they tend to gravitate, because they do have that adventurous spirit, they can gravitate towards gambling, risk taking. That kind of stuff. So look in your birth chart and see where you have, if you have Sagittarius. But they're really on the good side of Sagittarius. They're looking to like level up, right? We had Libra show us how we can have harmony in our relationships. We had Scorpio kill off the things, the shit that wasn't working for us. And then we have Sagittarius there to say, hey, what can we seek? What can we find? And then we move into Capricorn. And so Capricorn is a cardinal earth sign. So where you have the Cancer ruled by the moon, you have Capricorn ruled by Saturn. And you might have heard of the Saturn return, because it takes Saturn about 30 years to go through your zodiac wheel. So Saturn is a planet of work, discipline, productivity. What does it say in here? Conservation of material resources. Indicates areas of the personality will be restricted by fears or lack of confidence. Capricorn being a cardinal earth sign, right? It's like the paternal father. So you have Cancer over here as the mother. You have Capricorn here as the father. Like the mother's like, oh, yes, I love you. You can do this. Everything we find. The father's like, fucking do it already, bro. Like, what did I just teach you? Like, get moving. Because that's Saturn pushing. And right now we have Saturn in the sign of Capricorn. It's home in the sign of Capricorn. And not everybody's going to feel that transition. I don't have a lot of Saturn Capricorn in my chart. But I love the symbolism of it, because I have felt this past year that I really need to work towards a specific goal. Being ruled so much by air signs and Mercury, I'm just like, in my head, it's like, ground down. That is exactly what Capricorn is saying. Ground yourself down. Come back down to the ground, right? We had Sagittarius. That's like, I'm going on an adventure. I'm going to seek the truth. And then we get to Capricorn, and Capricorn's like, yo, fine, that was fun. I hope you found the truth, because it's time to get the work done. Once we find the truth, we have to come back down from the ethers and we have to integrate it. And so that's what we're getting into with Capricorn. Once we get out of Capricorn, we get into Aquarius. And this is like the most misunderstood sign. So I'm probably going to read some shit. Everybody thinks Aquarius is a water sign. It's not a water sign. The symbol is the water bearer, and I would have to look up what that means. I think it's just the water bearer. You think of somebody that holds, I don't know, intuitive. That's Aquarians. They're an air sign. They got to be fixed. Yeah, that's what I thought. Because Capricorn is cardinal, so they're a fixed air sign. So they're not like Gemini, immutable air sign out in the ether. They're fixed. So, we talk about coming into the age of Aquarius, because the different ages actually went backwards in the zodiac wheel. So we came out of the age of Pisces, and I'll get to what Pisces means in a minute. And now we're in the age of Aquarius. Aquarius, they tend to be rebellious, eccentric, spontaneous, original, forward-thinking, detached, but also years ahead of their time. So when I think of an Aquarian, I think of somebody who is really intuitive. Imaginative. You know, a lot of people who I've known who have been Aquarians have seemed very grounded, very deep people. I don't like saying that, like deep, but very spiritually deep, a deep understanding of who they are, kind of before their time. So, but they're an air sign as well. So that deals a lot with thinking. Air is always going to be thinking. Earth is always going to be tangible, what you can hold, grounding, not up in the air. Fire is always going to be fast-moving change, and then water is always going to deal with emotions. These guys are air, so they're very future-oriented and future-thinking. And fixed signs are outgoing. Rather than being outgoing, they're receptive. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, and that's the planet of freedom and revolutionary vision, the urge for change. So it's associated with mental studies, electricity, and astrology. Yeah. So once we leave Aquarius, right, where we're kind of doing like this forward thinking now, right? Sagittarius was more about like forward moving. Aquarius is forward thinking. But then we get into Pisces, and I always say Pisces I always wonder, like, is it the leftovers of the zodiac? Because Pisces, on the dark side, they tend to be very self-destructive. think Kurt Cobain. He was a Pisces. They tend to be very like artistically inclined. They're the fish. They they're a mutable water sign. So they're the 12th house, mutable water. And so when we think about a Pisces, they're very deeply sensitive and intuitive, but on the top, their mutableness, their receptiveness, their adaptableness, they're very feminine. They tend to just say, okay, yeah, I'm going to go with whatever you say. I'm going to go with the flow. And a lot of people might not understand kind of what's bubbling underneath for them. Um, they're friendly and they're likable. I tend to really love Pisceans. They can be moody and introspective, which I totally understand because I'm moody and introspective, even though I don't think that I have anything in my birth chart that's Pisces. But they're dreamy, they're full of imagination, and that has to do with their ruling planet of Neptune. So Neptune is all about illusion. They have a hard time making decisions, but they're not highly reactive. They're very creative, very innovative people. Feminine, yin, receptive. Yeah. And so Neptune represents the universal ocean of oneness with all beings. And so whereas Aquarius was like that forward thinking, we can look at Pisces as being like, okay, now how can we get everybody together? They're compassionate, they're idealistic, they're imaginative. Oh, yes, but they can be easily confused. So there can be a little bit of confusion that goes with it. And if you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, like if you look at all 12 signs and then the planets, it kind of moves as an evolutionary process. And Pisces to me is almost like okay, like we get to Aquarius, right? Where we're like finally forward thinking. We had Sagittarius, which was like forward moving from what Scorpio was trying to do. They all input their little bits of personality, their little bits, what they need, what we need to evolve. And then you get to Pisces, and Pisces is almost like the question asker to me. Like, there's got to be one questioner in the fucking room, right? Like, you can't go to school and not have one person that says, well, this might be fucking bullshit. And that almost seems to be what Pisces is saying. Like, they're going with the flow and they're saying, yeah, okay, but they're not really sure. But I think Pisces also shows us to stay in touch with, like, the mysticism that is within each of us. Yeah, so that is... Kid waking up. So that to me is the zodiac wheel in a nutshell. And I hope that like my Gemini ways didn't, baby girl, 1 second. My Gemini ways didn't like, I don't know, confuse the shit out of you. If it did, like leave something in the comments. I've been studying astrology so since I was like a teenager. I've been super interested in it for like over 20 years now. But I'm still learning this shit. Like people think I know a lot and I don't. But this is, the basic outline. And so I don't know, leave a comment.